Alright, so good to be back. Welcome back to my channel. My name is Edson. Today is going to be a continuation of our Sequelize series. Sequelize is an ORM, object relational mapper, that we can use to interact with our database. It helps you to connect to the database. All right, so we created a user model, which is going to be translated into a users table, which we saw right here in our database. We have our users table. And so these right here, which are attributes of this model, are translated into columns in our database. You can see first name, last name, and email. And we can see right here, we have first name, last name, and email. The ID is auto-generated for us, as well as created at and updated at. If we expand this, you see here, we have created at and updated at. These are all the columns that we have for this specific table, which is our users table. Let's say you don't want this created and updated at. Inside these options, this is where you can specify timestamps. Created at and updated at are called timestamps. By default, they are set to true. And so you can come down here on options, they set them to false like this. And thus you won't have these columns in your table. But for us, we're going to keep this, we need this. And so I'm not going to be running this command here. Something else that we can do to control or manipulate the model so that we can have the table that we want in the database is this ID column, which is, by the way, you see this key is the primary key. We can define our own ID, which we're going to do later on. What we want to do right now is we want to be able to add data in this table right here. I'm going to head over to our documentation. You can see right here, I'm going to go to model instances. So what is an instance? An instance of the class represents one object from that model. So creating an instance, you should not create instances by using the new operator directly. You can use the build method. You can see they are calling the model and then using the build method on that model. So on our model, we do have our model right here. Inside here where we sync our database and then we create our table. This is where we're going to be creating our instances. And I'm going to put this into curly brackets. Let me format this document. And so inside the dot then, once we create our table, we can then save our data. So we're going to say user.build. There's a build method that we can use. Then inside this build, we can pass in the object. The object that has these attributes right here. All of these fields are required. So first name, let me say Sadson. Separate these with commas, and then we say last name in quotation marks, MK, and then email sadson@example.com. So when you call user.build, it's not communicating with the database at all. This is because the build method only creates an object that represents data that can be mapped to a database. And so we can assign this to a variable. So I'm going to call it sadson. In order to really save or persist this instance in the database, we need to call the save method. So we're saving Sadson here. Sadson, this thing that we created up here, .save. This now actually saves this to the database. And of course, this is asynchronous. So we need a .then. We also need a .cache to that. So we can then do something with this. We can log this to the console. User successfully saved to the database. And then here in the cache, we can console that error, .error, failed to save the user. And I can pass in the error in here and to be specific, and then we can pass it right here. Here I didn't specify, we can specify the error right here. And here we did, but we did not pass it here. We have to pass it right here. I'm sure this will return some kind of data or something. So we can pass in data right here. And then we can check that data. Let me pass in data here. In the .then, when you save the data, log it to the console. Let's see what that data looks like. Let me clear down here and then node index.js, run this. You can see we have data returned, which is this data right here. And surely we should have this in the database. So let's check out our database and see whether we have this information. So I'm going to close this and then open our database, and surely we do have it right here. You can see for today, I think it's enough to do this. If you do have any questions, please leave them in the comment section. You can leave a like, leave a comment. You can also consider subscribing to the channel. I hope to see you in my next tutorial. For now, I'm out. Cheers.